Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. The Edwardian era. You've seen the waistcoats, the tea sets, the well-trimmed gardens. You've watched the period dramas, maybe even binge-watched them under a blanket, with something warm to drink. But the lives of real Edwardian families weren't all lace curtains and ballroom dances. They were lives of coal dust, corsets, cracked hands, and 100 unspoken rules that told you exactly where you did or didn't belong. So before we peel back the wallpaper and look behind the polished veneer of Edwardian life, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. If you genuinely enjoy slow journeys through uncomfortable pasts. And while you're settling in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see this little channel connect people across so many different time zones. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background. Let the world outside fade away. And let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey. What life was really like for an Edwardian family. The Edwardian period spanned a little more than a decade, from 1901 to 1910, officially the reign of King Edward VII. But culturally, it lingered like a ghost until the First World War shattered its fragile illusions. It was a time of contrasts. Horse-drawn carriages still clattered down cobbled streets, but the motorcar was already rattling onto the scene. Women wore floor-length dresses with high collars, but some were quietly organizing for the right to vote. Gas lamps flickered beside new electric lighting. Class wasn't just a social concept. It was your destiny, written in stone, stitched into your clothes, and cooked into your breakfast. You weren't just British. You were upper class, middle class, working class, or something even less dignified. And that label dictated everything. What you wore, what you ate, when you woke up, and whether your family had indoor plumbing or just a bucket behind a thin wooden door. Tonight, you'll live that life. But not as a king or a duchess. Not as a lord's heir or a guest at a country estate with 12 servants and a ghost in the library. No. You are waking up as a member of a very average Edwardian family. Maybe you're in a bustling city like Manchester or Birmingham. Or maybe you're in a smoky industrial village, surrounded by rows of brick terraces and coal-stained window panes. Either way, there are no maids fluffing your pillows, no sprawling lawns, no lemon-drizzle cake being plated on fine china. You'll share your bed, probably with a sibling or two, and you'll wake up cold. You'll scrub your face in icy water. You'll eat something called dripping toast and pretend it's breakfast. You'll wear the same clothes every day until they're too threadbare to mend. You'll work hard. You'll breathe coal smoke. You'll try not to die of something minor. And if you're lucky, you'll make it to adulthood with all your teeth and at least one pair of boots that don't leak. This was a world on the edge of modernity. A world where the telephone and the workhouse existed at the same time, where tuberculosis and powdered wigs briefly overlapped in polite conversation, and where, despite all the hardship, families did what they could to survive, to endure, and occasionally to sit around a fire, tell stories, and feel human. So take a deep breath. Let go of your modern world for a little while. You're not in 2025 anymore. You're waking up in 1905. Welcome to Edwardian England. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not the crisp kind of cold that makes your cheeks pink and your breath mist charmingly in the air. No, this is the kind of cold that lives in the floorboards. It sinks into your mattress, hides in your bones, and politely refuses to leave, even when the sun comes up. You're awake, but you don't open your eyes right away. There's no point. The room isn't dark, it's gray. Everything is gray. The wallpaper used to be blue once, maybe, but years of soot and damp and coal smoke have drained the color from everything, including the light. The air is still, close. The tiny window in the corner is fogged with frost from the inside, a lace pattern of ice spreading across the glass like nature's quiet warning that it's still January. You shift beneath the blanket. Not that it helps. It's not a soft, plush duvet. It's something rough, heavy, and slightly damp around the edges. A woolen coverlet, probably older than you, pilled and threadbare, with a weight that feels less like comfort and more like obligation. Your mattress groans beneath you as you move, not because it's fancy or adjustable, but because it's made of straw. Straw stuffed into a ticking sack. A few sharp bits jab through the seams and poke your leg. You scratch absently, hoping it was straw and not one of the mice you heard last night. You're not alone in bed. That would be a luxury. You share this tiny space with a sibling, or two. You don't remember who exactly. At some point in the night, you all shuffled and rotated like awkward, shivering constellations under a single itchy blanket. One of them is snoring softly now, their breath warm and sour against the back of your neck. Another has wrapped their feet around yours, a desperate bid for heat. There's no such thing as personal space in an Edwardian bed. You are a pile of limbs, twitching, scratching, existing. The room smells lived in. That's a polite way of saying damp wood, old boots, sour milk, and bodies that haven't bathed properly in days, maybe weeks. There's a chamber pot under the bed. You smell it before you see it. You try not to breathe too deeply. It's full again. You finally open your eyes. There's no alarm clock. No phone buzzing gently on a bedside table. In fact, there's no bedside table. Just a stack of old newspapers with a cracked mug and a half-used candle. The wick is blackened. The wax has run in thick drips down the side and hardened across the wood, like the aftermath of a small disaster. You hear it then. The call of the day. It's not a gentle ringtone. It's your mother shouting up the narrow staircase. Her voice cuts through the wooden slats of the floor like a blade. Get up! Stove's lit! And there's water on the boil! You don't move right away. You don't want to. The air outside the blanket is like cold soup, clammy, thick, and unpleasant. But you know what happens if you don't get up. The coal fire won't last. The porridge will be gone. And the day won't wait for you. You sit up. The first thing that hits you is the draft. It snakes through the broken window frame, brushes past your ankles, and sets your teeth to chatter. The second thing is the ache in your back. You're young, but your spine already complains like it's lived through 2 wars and a factory shift. That's just the mattress, and the damp, and the cold, and the fact that you haven't had a proper pillow since the one with feathers got taken apart to stuff a draft excluder last year. The room is tiny, barely wide enough for the bed, and not much else. The floor is plain wooden boards, uneven and creaking under every movement. In the corner, a washstand holds a cracked ceramic bowl and a small jug of water gone tepid overnight. If you're lucky, it hasn't frozen. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and step onto the icy floor. Bare feet. Always bare feet. Your boots are by the door, stiff and scuffed, with soles worn nearly smooth. You won't put them on until later. First, the ritual of waking. You shuffle to the washstand, fingers already numb, and splash a bit of water onto your face. It's cold enough to make you gasp. You scrub quickly, mechanically. No soap this morning. There's barely enough for laundry. You try to clean your teeth with a worn brush and a pinch of salt. It stings. Your gums bleed a little. You spit into a cracked dish and pray your breath doesn't scare away the milkman. There's no privacy. You dress in the same clothes you wore yesterday and the day before. Your underclothes are wool and they itch. Your outer garments smell faintly of smoke and last week's mutton stew. You shake the dust off and pull them on. Outside the door, the hallway is narrow and steep. The banister wobbles. The stairs creak like they're rehearsing for a horror play. You walk carefully. You know which boards splinter, which ones stick. The wallpaper here is peeling. Faded floral patterns half-eaten by damp. A gas lamp flickers on the wall, unlit. You won't light it, not until evening. Gas is expensive. Everything is expensive. Downstairs, the kitchen smells slightly better. Coal smoke and boiling oats. Your mother is already stirring something in a dented pot. The stove crackles, barely enough heat to warm the room, but it's something. There's a little bit of light coming through the lace curtains, and the window rattles with every gust of wind. You hear the familiar sounds of morning, the rattle of the coal scuttle, the drip of the leaky tap, the sharp snap of the fire when someone throws in a bit of kindling. Outside, the street is already waking up. You hear the clatter of hooves, the shout of a newspaper boy, the dull roar of the factory whistle in the distance. Life is beginning again, relentlessly, inexorably. And you? You're an Edwardian child in a working family. Your day hasn't even started yet. But the world is already expecting you to be useful. Title: Breakfast and the Brutal Rituals of Getting Clean. You shuffle toward the stove. It's barely warm, but compared to the upstairs bedroom, it might as well match to the equator. Your mother has her back to you, stirring something in a pot, with the patience of someone who gave up on flavor years ago. She doesn't greet you. She's already done this for 3 other people, and she'll do it for 3 more before the morning's out. The table is already set, if you can call it that. A few chipped bowls, one with a crack running dangerously down the middle like it's trying to make an exit. Spoons, none of them matching. A sticky sugar tin, mostly empty. And beside that, a small jug of milk, guarded like treasure. You sit down and wait. Your stomach is already grumbling. But there's no feast coming, no eggs sizzling, no coffee brewing in a fancy machine with blinking lights and frothy promises. There's only porridge. Every day, without fail. Porridge made from oats that arrived in a bulk sack last month and have been doled out like gold dust ever since. She ladles it into your bowl with a sound that's closer to a splat than a pour. It's gray, slightly lumpy, and steaming hot in the way that makes your mouth nervous. You stir it with your spoon, watching as a small bubble breaks the surface and spits hot cereal onto your sleeve. You blow on it, not to cool it, but to delay eating it. If you're lucky, and today maybe you are, there's a bit of treacle, just a drop, just enough to make your tongue feel like it's been rewarded. It spreads across the surface in a weak little spiral, disappearing fast into the mush. The milk? That depends. If you're the youngest, someone else has already helped themselves to the top. You get what's left. Thin, slightly sour, and barely enough to dampen the oats. Still, you pour it, watching it vanish into the bowl like a magician's trick. You take a bite. It sticks to the roof of your mouth. It's not bad exactly, but it's not good either. It tastes like a warm apology from someone who doesn't really mean it. Grainy, bland, vaguely salty. The texture clings to your tongue. You swallow, and it slides down like regret. Next to you, someone else coughs into their bowl. No one flinches. Illness is expected. It's winter. Everyone's coughing. Everyone's always coughing. There's no toast, no butter. Butter is for Sundays or birthdays or a rare good week at the docks. Eggs are luxuries. Bacon is mythical. Fruit? Only if you count the dark smear on your sleeve from the berry pie that exploded last Michaelmas. And tea? Maybe. If there's any left. Weak. Almost transparent. The kind that doesn't taste like tea so much as it tastes like the idea of tea. Breakfast isn't a meal, it's a formality. A warm delay before you go out and face the cold again. You finish your bowl. The porridge has turned to paste. The last few bites are gummy and uninviting. But you eat them. You have to. You won't get another meal until midday. And even then, meal is a generous term. You push the bowl away, and now it's time for hygiene. You wouldn't call it that, of course. Not because you're dirty, but because hygiene as a concept is something rich people talk about. You do what you can, and you do it quickly. There's no bathroom in the house, no indoor plumbing. The toilet is out back, an outhouse with a wooden seat and a door that never shuts quite right. You don't use it unless you absolutely must. Not in winter. Not unless you're brave or desperate. Instead, there's the morning basin. The washstand in the corner of the kitchen holds a pitcher of water and a bowl. The water's cold. Always. It might have been warmed by the fire, but more likely it was scooped from the tap in the yard before it froze. You dip your hands in first, flinching as the cold bites your skin. You splash your face, rub at your eyes. Try to scrub away the greasy film of last night's sleep and the grime of 1,000 reused pillowcases. There's soap, sometimes. A small lump, greenish and cracked. It smells vaguely medicinal, like someone boiled down a tree and added disappointment. You rub it between your hands, create a weak lather, and rinse quickly before your fingers go numb. To dry, there's a towel. It's damp. It's always damp. It hangs from a nail by the stove, trying its best, but it gave up long ago. You pat your face and neck, trying not to think about how many other people have used it today. Brushing your teeth? If you're lucky, you have a brush. If not, you use a rag and a dab of baking soda or salt. It doesn't foam. It doesn't freshen. It just scours. You spit into the fire. It sizzles. Your breath still smells like porridge, and maybe tooth powder, and maybe, just maybe, something vaguely metallic. Bathing? That's not for mornings. That's not for today, unless something's gone terribly wrong. A bath is a planned event. A metal tub pulled out into the kitchen. Water heated by kettle, poured carefully, bucket by bucket, while the rest of the family tries to pretend they're not listening. You might get one bath a week. Shared. First come, best water. Last in? You're basically sitting in brown broth. So instead, you wipe, you rinse your face, you hope for the best, you rub your hands on your trousers and check your nails. If they're clean enough not to draw comment from a teacher or an employer, you're done. Hair is combed dry, or wet, or not at all. Girls might braid theirs. Boys might slick it down with something called macassar oil, which smells like furniture polish and leaves a dark spot on every shirt collar it touches. And deodorant? Doesn't exist. Perfume is for the wealthy. You get what you get. If you stink like everyone else. The trick is to not stand out. Smelling like sweat is normal. Smelling like flowers is suspicious. You check your reflection in a small square mirror, warped, cracked at one corner. Your face is pale, your ears are red, and your eyes are already tired. But you're presentable, sort of. Enough, and that's all you need to be. Because now, it's time to face the day. You're dressed now, but dressed is a generous term. Edwardian clothing wasn't built for comfort. It was built for structure, for status, and for shaping bodies into silhouettes that satisfied society far more than the person actually wearing them. For women and girls, it starts with the foundation, literally. A chemise, thin and often fraying, then a corset, tightly laced, stiff with boning made from whalebone or steel. It doesn't just hold you in, it holds you together. Your spine, your ribs, your stomach, all cinched and arranged to mimic the fashionable S-bend posture of the day. Breathing is more of a hobby than a guarantee. And no, you don't get help lacing it. If you're lucky, your mother or older sister pulls the strings while you grip the bedpost. If not, you wrestle into it yourself, groaning, tugging, wincing. Once it's on, it stays on. For hours, all day. Maybe days, if bathing isn't an option. Over the corset, a petticoat, or two, or three. Layers of rough cotton or wool depending on the season. Then a blouse, high-collared, stiff, buttoned up so tightly it feels like you're being slowly strangled by respectability. And finally, a skirt, heavy, long, swishing around your ankles, threatening to trip you if you walk too quickly or take the stairs wrong. You pin your hair up even if it doesn't want to stay. Loose hair is seen as wild, improper, childish. You smooth it with a bit of water or old pomade and secure it with hairpins that were probably lost in the mattress last night. If you're a boy, you get no relief either. A rough wool shirt, maybe flannel if the weather's bad. Trousers held up by suspenders that dig into your shoulders. A buttoned vest if you have one. Your jacket is itchy, always itchy. You wear it anyway. It hides the tears. It makes you look more like a man, even if you're 12 and your arms are too thin. There's a cap, too. Every boy has a cap. It's like a badge of identity. Threadbare, greasy, often passed down from an older brother who wore it until it was more patch than fabric. And the shoes? Boots, technically. But calling them shoes implies comfort. Yours are stiff, misshapen from water damage and wear. The laces don't match. The soles are thin. The right one leaks. In winter, you pack the hole with newspaper. In summer, you try not to step in horse manure. For wealthier families, dressing is a ritual, assisted by maids or valets. But you don't have servants. You have siblings, possibly 7. They're all crammed into 2 bedrooms and 1 wash basin. Dressing is a noisy, chaotic ballet of elbows, pins, and second-hand garments. Once dressed, you prepare to leave, but not before bracing yourself for the outdoors. Not the weather, the walk through your home, because Edwardian homes, at least for the working class, were often as unforgiving as the world outside. Your house is small, a terrace house, one in a row of many, all identical shoulder to shoulder, like bricks in a long, weary wall. 2 stories if you're lucky, sometimes 1, always narrow. The front door opens directly into the sitting room. There's no hallway, no vestibule, just a scuffed wooden threshold and a rug that exists more in theory than in practice. The sitting room is for show, really. There's a fireplace, cold unless guests are coming, a threadbare armchair, a stiff-backed wooden settee that creaks ominously whenever someone sits down. A shelf holds a few family photos, sepia-toned faces staring back with solemn expressions and perfectly combed hair. No one smiles in photographs. Smiles are for parties. Photographs are for legacy, and most families can't afford many. From the sitting room, the narrow stairs rise like a threat. The walls along them are stained with coal dust and handprints from years of climbing up and down without light. Gas lamps line the walls, but you don't light them unless absolutely necessary. Gas costs money. The kitchen is the heart of the house, and the only place with real heat. The iron stove, kept going from morning till night, is your one defense against the English chill. You huddle near it while peeling potatoes or boiling water, the back of your legs hot while your front still feels like it's standing in a snowdrift. There's a scullery at the back. It's barely more than a lean-to with a stone sink and a thin wooden door that leads to the yard. The floor is wet, always wet. The tap drips. The smell of lye and coal ash lingers in the air. It's here you scrub laundry until your fingers bleed. It's here you dump the slop bucket. And it's here the wind sneaks in, even when the door is shut. The walls of the house are damp. The wallpaper is peeling in the corners, stained by smoke and the slow, creeping touch of mold. In summer, the house sweats. In winter, it freezes. There is no insulation. The bricks radiate cold. You wear a shawl indoors. Upstairs, the bedrooms are crowded. One for the parents, one for the children. Maybe a third if your family is lucky or slightly better off. The beds are crammed together. Mattresses sagging with age. Linens patched and repatched. Everyone sleeps close. Siblings share not just space but warmth, coughs, lice, and dreams. There's no bathroom, only a chamber pot under the bed and an outhouse in the backyard. You take turns, you hold your nose. In winter, the seat is a personal hell, and the house is loud. Every creak is known, every cough echoed through the thin walls. The neighbor's radio filters in from next door. The baby cries, the kettle whistles, coal is shoveled, someone swears quietly after burning their hand. And beneath it all, the constant tick of a clock that's been hanging crooked for 10 years, but still keeps perfect time. It's not glamorous. It's not even comfortable, but it's home. For wealthier Edwardians, homes are sprawling country estates or elegant townhouses in London. Rooms with names like drawing room and morning parlor, mahogany staircases, chintz-covered furniture, servants bustling invisibly through the background. But that's not your life. Your world is linoleum floors and cracked teacups, coal smoke and boiled cabbage, a front step that always needs sweeping, a roof that always leaks in the same place, a window that sticks when it rains. And yet, in its own way, it's full of noise, of warmth, of scraped knees, worn boots, whispered gossip, and the smell of baking bread on payday. Because in Edwardian England, a home doesn't have to be grand. It just has to endure. The sun is barely up, and already the day is waiting for you, with its list of demands, its clatter of factory bells, its stern-faced overseers, and its complete lack of sympathy, because in Edwardian England, if you don't work, you don't eat, and you are not in a position to skip a meal. Whether you're a man, a woman, or a child, your hands have a job. They grip tools, scrub floors, pack crates, sew seams, bake bread, carry bricks, and hold tight to the thin thread between getting by and going under. Let's start with the men. If you're a father in a working-class Edwardian home, your day begins before sunrise. Not with yoga, not with journaling, with the sound of the factory horn or the whistle from the local mill. It blares through the air like a commandment. Get moving, or get left behind. You lace your boots, still damp from yesterday, and head out into the morning fog. Your lunch is packed in a tin. Cold tea, a slab of bread, and maybe some cheese if you're lucky. You won't be back until after dark. You might be a coal miner. That means descending into the black mouth of the earth 6 days a week, crouched in tunnels barely wider than your shoulders, swinging a pickaxe in the dark. Your lungs fill with dust. Your eyes adjust to the absence of light. Your back carries the weight of a collapsing empire. Explosions are common, so are collapses. So is death. You might be a dock worker, slinging crates onto ships bound for colonies and cities you'll never see. The work is heavy, fast, brutal. Your fingers are always split. Your back never quite straightens. You get paid by the load, not the hour. You might be a machinist in a textile mill, standing beside a belt-driven loom that clacks so loud it steals your hearing over the years. The air is hot, heavy with lint and oil. The machines don't stop. Not for lunch, not for limbs. One wrong move and you're part of the equipment. Or maybe you're just on the street corner, hat in hand, looking for day work. Construction, road laying, chimney sweeping, whatever someone will give you. Anything's better than nothing. Because nothing means the workhouse, and no one wants that. Now the women. You may not have a job outside the home, but don't mistake that for rest. If you're a mother, you are the household machine. You light the fires, make breakfast, pack lunches, Sweep the floor, boil the linens, dress the children, mend the clothes, clean the chamber pots, go to market, and, if you're lucky, sit down for 5 minutes without someone shouting your name. If you do work, you're up just as early, pulling on the same long skirt you wore yesterday, boots still lined with coal ash. You might work in a laundry, your arms raw from scrubbing other people's clothes. You might be a seamstress, bent over a table in a dim room for 12 hours, stitching for pennies. You might be a charwoman, cleaning houses fancier than anything you'll ever afford, scrubbing someone else's marble with your own scalded knuckles. If you're unmarried, you might work as a shop girl, a kitchen maid, a nanny, or a factory spinner. Long hours, little pay, less dignity. The men talk over you, the supervisors talk down to you, and the customers rarely look you in the eye. And then there are the children. Child labor isn't a scandal in Edwardian England. It's survival. If you're 9 or 10, or younger, your small hands are useful, too useful. You might work as a piecer in a cotton mill, crawling under machinery to retrieve fallen thread. You might deliver newspapers before dawn, work in a brickyard, run errands for a local butcher, sweep chimneys, sell matches on the street corner. And if you're old enough to go to school, well, you still work, because school ends at 3 o'clock, but survival doesn't. You come home and help, wash dishes, mind siblings, run to the market, polish shoes, fold linens. Life is one long shift with no clock out. And no one, not your parents, not your teachers, asks how you're feeling. Feelings don't earn wages. No matter your job, the rules are simple. Be early, work hard, say little, don't complain. Because there are always more workers than jobs. Always someone waiting to take your place. A cousin, a neighbor, a stranger from the next town over. The Edwardian labor system runs on bodies, yours included. There are no breaks unless the boss allows it. No safety regulations. No sick leave. You bleed? You bandage it. You cough? You keep going. You're pregnant? Then you're working pregnant. Weekends? Just Sunday. One day. And even then, it's not for rest. It's for church. For starching collars, sitting up straight, and pretending everything's fine while the minister talks about humility from behind polished wood. Wages are low. Always low. A man might earn 20 shillings a week. A woman, 10. A child, a few pence. You hand your pay packet to the head of the household unopened. That's not your money. That's rent. That's bread. That's coal for the fire. If there's any left over, it might go into a tin marked savings. But more often it goes into someone's medicine, or a second-hand coat, or a funeral fund. And yet, somehow, people survive. They get up the next day. They lace their boots. They walk back to the factory, the laundry, the docks. They carry their tools. They carry their families. They carry the weight of empire on their backs, knowing full well it will never carry them. And when they're too old, too broken, there's no pension, no retirement. You work until you drop, and then, if you're lucky, someone collects enough for a burial. If not, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, there's still work to be done. And the street outside your home is already full of footsteps heading toward survival. So you take a deep breath, step outside, and join them. There's a quiet authority that lingers in every Edwardian home. It's not the man of the house, though he holds power. It's not the teacher or the employer or the landlord, though they demand obedience. No. It's the sense, deep, constant, and quietly oppressive, that something larger is watching, judging, measuring your worth not just by what you do, but by what you believe. Welcome to the religious life of an Edwardian family. It starts early. Before your eyes even open, you're shaped by it. A cross hangs on the wall above your bed. A Bible rests on the side table, even if no one has time to read it. Prayers are whispered at night, not with passion, but with routine. Like brushing your teeth. If you do it, it's done because you're supposed to, not because you expect it to change anything. You wake, you wash, you thank God you're alive, and maybe that you still have work. The Church of England sits at the top of this spiritual pyramid for many Edwardians. It's respectable, predictable. The sermons are long, the pews are hard, and the minister speaks like he's delivering a eulogy for joy itself. You dress up for church. You sit still. You nod politely. And you try not to fall asleep during the sermon, even if it drones on about the importance of patience while your stomach growls and your boots pinch your toes. Sunday is for God. That's non-negotiable. You shine your shoes. You scrub behind your ears. You iron your blouse or your shirt, even if it's the only one you own, and you walk to church with the rest of the neighborhood in a long, quiet parade of obligation. Inside, it's cold, always cold. But the windows are tall and stained with saints, and the organ groans like it too, wishes it could go home. The men sit with solemn expressions. The women wear hats with bent feathers. The children fidget under the threat of a clipped ear or a cold stare. Everyone knows the hymns by heart, even if they sing them without feeling. It's not about inspiration. It's about participation, belonging, obedience. God is not your friend. He is your judge. But not everyone follows the same path. Some families go to chapel instead. Methodist, Baptist, Congregationalist, smaller, plainer, stricter. These services are longer. The rules are firmer. Dancing is frowned upon. Drinking is sin. And joy, if it shows up, is politely ushered out for being too loud. Still, for many, the chapel feels closer to home. The minister knows your name. The sermons feel personal. And the hymns, sung by candlelight, can bring even the most hardened laborer to tears. Catholic families exist too, quietly, often among Irish communities. Their rituals are different. More incense, more Latin, more saints staring down from candlelit niches. There's the confessional, a dark little booth where sins are whispered and absolutions handed out like spiritual receipts. It's both terrifying and oddly comforting. And in the shadows of all these official religions, there are the other beliefs, the ones you don't speak of too loudly. Superstitions, old customs, half-remembered traditions passed down from grandmother to child, like heirlooms made of whispered warnings and strange rules. Don't cut your nails on a Sunday. It invites the devil. Don't place new shoes on a table. It's an omen of death. If a clock stops at midnight, someone in the house will soon die. If the fire burns blue, a ghost is passing by. If a bird flies into the house, it brings news, and not the good kind. These rules aren't in any Bible, but you follow them anyway. Not because you're afraid of breaking the rule, but because you're afraid of what might happen if you don't. You throw spilled salt over your shoulder. You turn away from cracked mirrors. You touch wood after saying something hopeful, as if the furniture might snitch on you to fate itself. Illnesses are explained with science and spirits. A cold might be caught from a draft, or from offending a restless ancestor. Bad luck might be just that. Or it might be because you forgot to leave bread out for the household ghost on Christmas Eve. And death? Death is everywhere, which means religion is too. You pass graveyards on your way to school. You attend funerals for neighbors, schoolmates, even children. The black armbands, the drawn curtains, the mourning clothes that stay in the wardrobe, always ready, always pressed. You learn young that life is fragile and short, and that God keeps a careful ledger. When someone dies, the mirrors in the house are covered. The clocks are stopped. Photographs are turned to face the wall. For a moment, the spiritual world presses close, like breath on a window pane. You are taught to fear hell, but also to fear shame. Your behavior reflects on the family, and the family reflects on your worth, which reflects on your soul, which reflects forever. And yet, there is comfort in belief. Prayers are said before meals, even if the meal is just bread and broth. Hymns are sung softly while working. Abide with me. Nearer, my God, to thee. The melodies stitched into memory as tightly as any seamstress's hem. Religion offers meaning, even if it's harsh. God sees all, which means he sees your pain, your work, your sacrifice. And if life is cruel, it is meant to be. It's a test, a trial, a proving ground. Heaven is the reward, and heaven, in Edwardian England, is where all the things you never had are finally given. Warmth, rest, food without work, peace without pain. It's not just a hope. It's the only thing that makes the suffering make sense. So you bow your head, you whisper your prayers, you follow the rules, you observe the rituals, and you try, desperately, to be good. Even if you're not sure what good means, even if you break the rules sometimes, swear under your breath, steal a moment of joy, tell a lie to get out of a chore, sit in the back row of church and think about pudding. You still try, because everyone is watching. Your neighbors, your mother, your priest, your God, and maybe, just maybe, someone else too. A ghost in the corner, a voice in the floorboards, a superstition come to life. After all, this is Edwardian England, and nothing is ever truly unseen. You're hungry again. Of course you are. It's been hours since your bowl of gluey porridge and your body's already burned through it, chasing siblings, scrubbing steps, or shoveling coal dust out of the shop floor. Edwardian life doesn't care how old you are. Your stomach is expected to wait its turn. And now, at last, comes the next meal. Not lunch. That's a rich person's word. For you, it's dinner. The midday meal that anchors your day, your energy, your brief moment of peace. And even that depends on the week, the work, and whether or not anyone remembered to take the dripping pan out of the larder. You sit at the table. If you're at home, your mother brings out what she's managed to scrape together. A stew, maybe. Thin, mostly potato, floating with slices of turnip that were one day away from becoming soup all on their own. If there's meat, it's probably suet, or a bit of pork fat that's been boiled into submission. Chewy, gray. You chew anyway. You might be lucky enough to get bread, dense and thick, not the fluffy white loaves of bakeries uptown, but a working loaf, rough around the edges and filled with air pockets the size of your hope. You sop it in the stew and pretend it tastes better that way. And if there's a rare treat, it's dripping. Not butter, not jam. Dripping. The rendered fat from roast meat, cooled into a congealed spread, slathered onto bread, salty, slightly metallic. Delicious, but only because you know how rare it is. Vegetables are seasonal and usually boiled until they surrender. Cabbage, carrots, onions, if you're fortunate enough to have them. They all get tossed in the same pot and boiled until the colors fade and the water turns the color of surrender. And tea, ah yes, tea, always tea. Even if there's nothing else, there is always tea, strong, dark, often brewed 3 times from the same leaves. The milk is thin, the sugar is stretched, but it's hot. And it fills your hands with something that feels almost like comfort. If you work in a factory or shop, dinner might come in a tin. You eat on a bench, surrounded by clanging machinery or soot-streaked walls. Someone might share a crust. Someone else might sneak a bit of cheese. You talk with your mouth full because there's no time to waste. And after dinner, you return to work. There's no nap, no break, no pause, not unless you count the walk back to the grind as leisure. Supper comes hours later, often late, sometimes after dark, and it's not much. Leftover stew, bread, sometimes just tea and a biscuit if the day was lean. Your stomach makes suggestions your kitchen can't fulfill. You eat quietly. Your feet ache. Someone complains about the draft. Someone else falls asleep at the table. Food isn't for pleasure. It's for survival. But still, somehow there is fun. Edwardian entertainment doesn't come through a screen. It's not on demand. It doesn't pause when you need the loo. It lives in the cracks between hardship and exhaustion. Maybe it's a piano in the corner of a crowded pub. One key always sticks. The whole room sings anyway, loudly, badly, joyfully. Old men bellow sea shanties. Young girls hum into their pints. Laughter mixes with beer breath and tobacco smoke until the whole place smells like defiance. Or maybe it's a trip to the music hall. If you've managed to save a few coins, you queue with the others in the cold, stamping your feet to keep warm. Inside there's velvet on the chairs, cracked but proud. The lights dim, and for an hour or two, you forget the soot, the noise, the hunger. The acts are rowdy. vaudeville singers, slapstick comedians, dancers who raise their skirts just high enough to make the old men wheeze. Someone tells a joke that makes half the crowd gasp and the other half cry with laughter. It's crude, it's glorious, and it's yours. Street performers fill the rest of the gap. Barrel organ players with trained monkeys, magicians with questionable hats, puppeteers who tell sad stories with string and velvet. You stand in the cold and laugh until your cheeks hurt. Markets, too, are entertainment, not just for buying, for watching, for whispering. You stroll past the stalls, pickled eggs, broken combs, sausages that have seen better days. A man selling bottles of cure-all tonic that smells like disappointment and vinegar. A woman selling ribbons that will never hold your hair in place but look pretty enough in the sun. And then there are fairs, not often. But when they come, oh, when they come. The town lights up, tents go up overnight, horses prance, candy floss appears like magic. There's music, fire eaters, Ferris wheels that creak with rust and thrill. For a few precious hours, everything feels strange and bright and possible. Children shriek, couples sneak off behind tents. You eat something fried and unidentifiable and regret nothing. Entertainment is not a luxury, it's a necessity. A survival tool disguised as a laugh, a dance, a whistle in the dark. Because without it, you'd only have the work, the drudgery, the endless parade of hours. So even the smallest joys, a song, a warm cup, a knock-knock joke whispered over dishes, are clung to like lifelines. And when the day finally ends, when your belly is half full and your feet are fully done, you sit back by the fire, or near it, if the fires run low. You might read, if you can, a penny paper, a serialized story in the Strand. Maybe Sherlock Holmes, solving crimes in a world that feels far more exciting than your own. Or you simply sit in silence, listening to the ticking of the clock, the rumble of your father's snore, the distant roll of a cart down the cobbled street. And if someone starts singing, a lullaby, a hymn, a popular tune from the music hall, you don't stop them. You close your eyes, and for just a moment, you forget the work title, Sickness in the Air, when Edwardian life turned cold, dark, and deadly. The cough starts quietly, a little tickle at the back of the throat. You clear it once, twice, and think nothing of it. The air's been damp. The fire went out last night. It's just the cold. But 2 days later, you're still coughing. It's deeper now, more insistent. Your chest feels heavy, like someone's sitting on it. And your mother, she's listening. Closely. Too closely. Because in Edwardian England, illness isn't a nuisance. It's a threat. It can take a child in a week, a parent in 3 days. It arrives in coughs, in sweats, in rashes that bloom like ink across your skin. It lives in your water, in your lungs, in your bed sheets, in the man who stood behind you at the butcher's yesterday. There's no national health service, no urgent care, no guarantee that the doctor will even come, unless you can pay. And even if he does, his bag is filled with tools that might help or might hasten your exit. You see, Edwardian medicine is brave, but it's not always kind. Let's start with the common cold. If you're lucky, it stays mild. You're given a blanket, a warm broth, maybe a drop of laudanum, yes, opium, to help you sleep. You sweat through your clothes, cough into a rag, and pray it doesn't become something worse. Because worse is everywhere. Consumption. That's what they call tuberculosis. It's not just a disease. It's a death sentence dressed in lace. You waste away slowly, coughing up blood into handkerchiefs that are washed and reused. The consumptive look, pale skin, red lips, sunken cheeks, was considered almost fashionable until it killed your cousin. Then there's scarlet fever, red rash, high fever, hallucinations, deafness if you survive. If diphtheria closes your throat with gray slime, typhoid brings fever and delirium, smallpox leaves scars, whooping cough steals the breath from babies until their lips turn blue, and influenza, that quiet little word, can empty half a street in one brutal season. The medicine? Let's say, creative. You might be given castor oil smelling like despair, mustard plasters smeared on your chest until the skin blisters, because pain must mean it's working, hot bricks at your feet, wet cloths on your head, whiskey if you're a man, whiskey if you're a child. Alcohol is the closest thing to anesthesia most homes have. Then there's the tonics, bottles that promise miracles, nerve elixirs, patent remedies, lung balm made of alcohol and morphine. You buy them from a shop, a neighbor, a traveling salesman in a bright vest and too many teeth. They might make you feel better, or they might do nothing at all, or worse. Doctors, when they appear, are often brisk, solemn men with wire spectacles and stained cuffs. They carry stethoscopes, scalpels, syringes that look more like plumbing equipment. They prescribe bleeding, purging, rest. If it's surgery you need, you may be better off without it. Anesthesia is risky. Infection is almost guaranteed. Antibiotics don't exist yet. Stitches are done by hand in dim light. And antiseptic. If remembered, it's carbolic acid. If not, it's your problem. Dentistry, ha. Sit down, bite a leather strap, and hope the man with the pliers has a steady hand. Childbirth? We don't talk about it unless we have to. It happens at home, always, on the bed or the floor, surrounded by women who whisper, boil water, and cross themselves when it goes quiet. Midwives are godsends, or witches, or both. They know how to turn a breech baby, how to cut a cord, how to stitch a mother back together before she bleeds out. But not always. Mothers die. Infants die. Sometimes both. And when they do, it's not scandal, it's math. Because death is not a stranger in your house. It is a frequent visitor. It has a chair by the fire. It wears a face you recognize. You see it in the street. A black carriage, curtains drawn, a slow procession behind it. All black coats and lowered heads. You feel it in the cold room upstairs, where the baby hasn't cried in 2 days. You hear it in the whispers. She was only 17. He came home from the mill and collapsed. It took him in the night. Funerals are regular. Death certificates are handwritten. Grief is worn on the sleeve, literally. Black armbands, mourning veils, brooches with hair inside. A ritual, a rhythm. Because grief must be organized. It must behave. But inside, the fear never leaves. You check your child's forehead 10 times a night. You listen for breathing. You worry over every rash, every cough, every tired look in the eyes. And sometimes, in the quietest hours, you go to church not for salvation, but for protection. You light a candle. You whisper a prayer. You promise to be better. If only the fever breaks. If only he wakes up. If only the baby cries again. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. And if they don't, you carry on. You have to. There are more mouths to feed, more fires to light, another shift to work, another floor to scrub. Your grief is folded neatly and tucked into your apron pocket. Because mourning too loudly is selfish, and crying in public is weak, and illness is expected, and death is part of life. But deep down, under the superstition, the religion, and the ragged comfort of tea, one truth remains. You are never far from losing someone, and the only thing more exhausting than the work is the constant effort of pretending that fact doesn't terrify you. The Edwardian family is the cornerstone of society, or so the pamphlets say. The church says it. The state says it. The newspapers say it. Everyone says it. But you live it. And you know it's not a cornerstone. It's scaffolding. Wooden. Warped. Swaying in the wind. Held up mostly by women. And sometimes children. And always silence. Let's start with the women. If you're a wife, you run the home. Not because it's empowering, but because there's no one else to do it. You don't have a housekeeper. You are the housekeeper, the laundress, the cook, the nurse, the accountant, the disciplinarian, the cleaner, the mediator, the comforter, the everything. From sunrise to the pitch-dark hours of night, your hands are moving, sweeping, stirring, mending, wringing out cloth diapers by the scullery sink, while your youngest screams upstairs and the kettle hisses its disapproval, and there's no recognition for it, no paycheck, no break, no quiet moment to admire your work. Because by the time you've finished scrubbing the last pot, someone's already tracked mud across the floor. You might also be pregnant. Again. You don't talk about it. Not openly. It just becomes obvious. A hand resting on your back more often. A wince when you bend. A subtle groan when you get up from the chair. No one asks how you feel. Pregnancy is not a condition. It's a duty, and birth, it's your own private war. You don't go to hospital unless something goes terribly wrong. You give birth in the same bed where you sleep, cry, nurse, and eventually die. And after, you're up the next day. Stirring porridge, changing nappies, swaddling the new baby while the toddler screams because no one's cut his bread the way he likes. If you're unmarried and pregnant, you don't speak. You don't show your face. You go away. Disappear to a cousin's house, a convent, a workhouse, somewhere you can give birth in shame and leave the child behind. If you're lucky, it's adopted. If not, you pretend it never happened. Because being a woman in Edwardian England means bearing everything, and being blamed for it too. Now let's talk about the children. If you're young, you don't remember when things were different. You're born into this life like it's law. Toys are scraps. Play is rare. Work begins early. You're expected to help, always. Fetch water, fold laundry, care for siblings, run errands, mind the stove, stay quiet when adults are talking, be polite, be clean, be invisible, except when someone needs something. If you're old enough for school, you go, for now. But the moment you're useful elsewhere, that changes. Boys leave to work. Girls stay to help or get placed in service. You might not even understand what childhood means. The word exists. The experience, not so much. If you're lucky, there's a little time after supper. A moment to play jacks, hopscotch, or spin a hoop down the alley. Maybe a story by candlelight. A song. A giggle under the covers until your mother tells you sharply to hush. If you're unlucky, your childhood ends at 7, or 5, or birth. Discipline is constant. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. A slap on the wrist. A shout. A belt. A stare that could pin you to the wall. Because your parents are tired. The world is harsh, and softness is a luxury they can't afford to teach you. And what about the father? He's the law in the house. Even if he's kind, he's distant. He works long hours, comes home exhausted, eats in silence, reads the paper, smokes his pipe. The children fear him slightly, even if he never lifts a hand. He disciplines when needed, speaks rarely, and expects to be obeyed. He's not cold, just cracked, like a teacup that's been poured into too often. A man who carries the weight of a family and feels himself sinking every day. And what if the father is gone? Dead, drunk, absent. Then the whole system shifts. The mother becomes granite. Children grow up fast. The neighbors whisper. The landlord stops being polite. Everything tightens. Everyone suffers. But no one says it aloud. You simply go on. Because in Edwardian family life, the most sacred virtue is endurance. You endure the hunger. You endure the cold. You endure the disappointment. You endure each other. Because there's nowhere else to go. Divorce is scandalous, rare, and nearly impossible for working-class women. Marriage is permanent, like wallpaper. Even if it peels, even if it molds. You stay. You cope. You adjust. Love is not roses and proposals. It's sewing a button back on your husband's only shirt. It's boiling socks until the smell fades. It's holding your child's head in your lap while they cry over a broken toy and pretending not to cry with them. And yet, amid the work and the worry, there are glimmers. Moments that flicker like candlelight on cracked glass. A child's laugh that echoes through the stairwell. A mother humming an old lullaby while she peels potatoes. A boy sharing half his crust with his sister without being told. A father who says nothing, but makes sure the fire is still lit when the baby wakes at 3 a.m. Love, in Edwardian England, is not loud. It's quiet, tired, stitched into aprons, folded into laundry, written in sighs. It is not always happy, but it is always trying. The Edwardian afternoon does not exhale. It sharpens. The work doesn't ease. It tightens its grip. By now, your stomach is growling again, because dinner is long gone and supper's still a dream. Your limbs ache. Your clothes cling to your back. You're either sweating from the heat of the kitchen or frozen from a job that keeps you outside, sweeping streets or hauling crates. There's no second wind, just more wind. And that's when the real tension starts to rise, not from inside your body, but from the world around you. Edwardian society, for all its stiff collars and carefully arranged tableware, is deeply divided, not just by class, but by rules, by roles, by invisible lines that, if crossed, are punished without mercy. You live in a world built on hierarchy, not just upstairs and downstairs, but above and below, rich and poor, man and woman, adult and child, master and servant, employer and employed, landlord and tenant, citizen and everyone else. And those boundaries are enforced with sharp glances and even sharper consequences. If you speak out at work, you might be fired. If you complain about wages, you're called a troublemaker. If you try to organize with your fellow workers, you're watched, marked, blacklisted. And yet, people are beginning to stir. Labor unions are growing. Quiet meetings held in back rooms of pubs, pamphlets passed in secret, murmured dreams of shorter hours, safer conditions. The radical idea that human life might be worth more than profit. But change is slow, and punishment is fast. A child who breaks a tool at the factory might be beaten. A maid who drops a plate might lose her place and be thrown into the street. A coal miner who shows up late once too often might find someone else already wearing his cap and taking his shift. Justice is not blind in Edwardian England. She has perfect vision, and she knows exactly which side of town you live on. And then there's the law. Policemen walk the streets in long coats, their faces unreadable. They don't ask questions. They tell. They keep the peace. But peace for whom? If you're caught stealing a loaf of bread, you might be sent to jail, or the workhouse, or shipped off to a juvenile facility that's more about punishment than rehabilitation. If you're homeless, sleeping rough under an overpass or in a graveyard, you're not seen as unfortunate. You're seen as suspicious. If you're a woman walking alone in the wrong part of town, you're suspect by default. The law doesn't just catch crime, it defines who counts. And above all that, the landlord. Rent is due whether you've eaten or not. Fall behind, and a notice appears on your door. A red stamp, a threat written in legalese. You have 7 days, maybe less, no matter if your child is ill, no matter if work has dried up. The rent is the law. The landlord is its voice. Arguments break out in the streets, over debts, over wages, over spilled coal, over whose child broke whose window. There are no quiet neighborhoods, no serene cul-de-sacs, just rows of houses too close together and tempers always on a slow boil. Inside the family, the tension shows too. The husband comes home later and later. His shoulders hang heavier. His voice is rougher. He drinks more than he used to, not because he's cruel, but because the world is. The wife snaps more often. She's not angry at the children, but the children are the only ones small enough to shout at without consequence. The older daughter starts looking at advertisements for work in another city or across the sea. She won't say it out loud, but she's planning her escape. The boy, barely 13, walks the long way home from school to avoid the gang of older lads who've already stolen his lunch twice this week. Everyone feels the pressure, and no one knows quite where to place it. So it leaks into glances, into slammed doors, into whispered arguments that turn loud after dark. And what about respectability? Yes. The most important currency in Edwardian society. Even if you're poor, you must appear clean, proper, controlled. Your children must be scrubbed, your shoes polished, your apron neat, even if your pantry is empty. The neighbors are always watching. They notice if your curtains are closed at the wrong time of day. They notice if your husband shouts too loudly, if your daughter talks to boys, if your son doesn't go to school, and they talk. Oh, how they talk. Gossip is a form of social control, passed like currency from doorstep to doorstep. Heard she's got money from somewhere. Heard he's been out of work 2 weeks now. Her baby looks small, doesn't it? Sickly. You learn to play the game, to smile, to lie, to say, we're managing, even when you're one crust away from hunger. You keep your head down, your voice soft, your children tidy, because you can't afford to be noticed for the wrong reasons. And yet, in the middle of all this tension, this pressure, this constant grind, people still help each other. The neighbor who lost her husband is quietly left a bundle of wood on her doorstep. The woman with too much bread this week shares a loaf with the mother of 5 across the street. A boy offers his hand-me-down shoes to his cousin. A man finds extra work and pays off his brother's rent before the landlord comes. There is conflict, yes, but there is also solidarity. Because when the world is cruel, sometimes the only shield left is each other. You endure the rules, you obey the laws, you bow your head. But when no one is looking, you lift someone else up, even if just for a moment. Even if all it buys them is one more safe afternoon. The sun sets slowly over the rows of brick houses, but the light doesn't linger. Not here. By 6 o'clock in winter, the world is already dark. Not softly dark, not warmly dim like a candlelit dinner, but black. Like smoke in your lungs, like coal in your hands. You feel the cold first, creeping in through the windowsills and rising from the cracks in the floorboards. You pull your shawl tighter. You stuff rags under the door to keep the wind out. You hold your breath while the fire gasps and flickers, trying to keep the last coals from going out. Because once the fire dies, the cold becomes something you can't ignore. The whole house changes with nightfall. Rooms shrink, walls groan. Every distant footstep outside becomes a potential threat. Every silence is heavy with meaning. This is when the fear sets in. Night is not a break. It is not peaceful. It is not safe. The dangers that the daylight hides are free now. You check the lock on the door. Again. It's flimsy. Just a latch, really. Nothing that would stop someone determined. And in this neighborhood, there's always someone desperate enough to test it. Outside, the streets belong to a different breed. The drunks are louder. The thieves are braver. The shadows are longer. A child alone after dark is a target. A woman alone is prey. You walk fast, eyes down, keys in hand, shoulders tight. You don't run, you never run, but your feet move faster without your permission. If someone calls after you, you don't turn around. You pretend you didn't hear, because if you answer, you might not make it home. And the police, they're not here to protect you. Not really. They're somewhere else, watching someone else, or watching you. Better to keep your head down and your mouth shut. Back inside, the house settles into its nighttime rhythm. The final chores are done. The boots by the fire are scraped of mud. The dinner dishes are rinsed in cold water and stacked neatly. The last coal is placed on the fire with silent hope. The children are put to bed. And now, there is nothing left to distract you. You lie in the dark, fully dressed. You don't undress to sleep unless you're wealthy or naive. The cold makes that dangerous. There's no central heating, no electric blankets, just layers, blankets, and each other. If you're lucky, you sleep in a bed. If not, you sleep on a mattress stuffed with straw or curled up on a bench near the hearth. The mattress is lumpy. It creaks with every movement, and it's crowded. There's always someone else's elbow in your ribs, someone's breath on the back of your neck. Sleep doesn't come easily. The cold gnaws at your feet. The fire crackles once, then fades. The wind rattles the windows, and your mind, it turns against you. You think of the baby who was sick this week, the cough that won't go away. You think of the rent due in 3 days. You think of the man who slipped on the tram rails and didn't get up. You think of the woman 3 doors down who was found still in bed, still and pale. You think of death, because death is always near. It's not abstract. It's not philosophical. It's domestic, practical, immediate. It's the fever that won't break. It's the knock at the door. It's the doctor who won't come. It's the scream in the alley. It's the silence afterward. Children die in the night. Mothers go quiet after childbirth. Fathers don't come home from the docks. And when it happens, the world doesn't pause. It notes the absence. It sends the vicar. It posts the notice. And then it continues. You hear stories. Someone found dead in the street. Someone burned in a fire that started from a knocked-over candle. Someone disappeared. The workhouses always have space. The cemeteries are never full. And the undertaker never takes a holiday. You lie awake listening to your own heartbeat, counting your family's breathing, one by one, reassuring yourself that they're still here, still warm, still alive. If someone coughs too long, you sit up. If the baby is too quiet, you check. And sometimes the house feels wrong, colder than it should be. Still, even though the wind is raging outside, you glance toward the corner, toward the hall, toward the staircase. You've been told not to believe in ghosts, but that doesn't help when your skin goes cold and your breath fogs in front of your face. You whisper a prayer you haven't said since Easter. You touch the cross by the bed. You close your eyes, and still the fear remains because you know what the world can take from you. It's taken before. It will take again. Even when you do everything right, even when you pray, even when you pretend not to believe in curses or bad luck or spirits that linger. You don't cry. You don't scream. You lie still and wait for morning, because that's the only way through it. And eventually, the fear gives way to exhaustion. Your body sinks, your limbs go heavy, your mind drifts, and you dream of nothing, because dreaming, real dreaming, is too risky, and the world outside your window will be waiting for you again soon. You made it. You're still here. The fire is nearly out now, just the faintest orange glow in the stove's iron belly. The last crackle of wood turned to memory. The room is dim still. The edges of everything, chair legs, teacups, sleeping children, blur into shadow. There's a calm now, but it's not peace. It's just the absence of motion. That's all most Edwardians ever got. Not comfort, just stillness. And even that's borrowed. You lie beneath your blanket, wrapped in layers not for luxury, but necessity. You adjust the one spot where the straw pokes your back. You tuck your feet away from the corner that always feels colder than the rest of the bed. You shift just enough to not disturb the person beside you. The day has drained everything from you. Your muscles, your breath, even your thoughts. But in the silence, your mind still wanders. You think of the chores tomorrow, the wages that won't stretch far enough, the pair of boots with the sole coming loose, the neighbor who might be coughing for the last time, the letter you haven't had time to write. But also, you think of how your child laughed this morning when a sparrow flew straight into the kitchen window and bounced off like a startled, feathery joke. You think of the music you heard from the tavern on your way home. Just a few notes, drifting over cobblestones, reminding you that joy still exists in fragments. You think of the warmth in your hands when you held your mug of tea, even if it tasted like overboiled bark. It was something. Sometimes, something is enough. Because in Edwardian England, there are no guarantees, no safety nets, no quiet retreats with silk sheets and breakfast in bed. What you have, however fragile, is earned, kept, and fiercely protected. You have your body, even if it aches. You have your roof, even if it leaks. You have your family, even if they shout. And you have the night. Dark, still, and indifferent. The world outside continues. Somewhere, a factory horn wails. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere, a constable walks his beat with boots that echo across wet stone. But here, in this narrow bed, in this narrow house, you rest. You made it through another Edwardian day, You rose in the cold. You worked with hands chapped and cracked. You cooked with what little you had. You endured the rules, the hierarchy, the class lines that wrapped around every corner of your life like invisible chains. You prayed. You worried. You folded laundry with quiet dignity. You buried your fear. You wore your grief. You smiled when you didn't feel like it. And now, you sleep. No electric lights. No humming appliances. No gentle white noise or screens or podcasts or padded headboards. Just you, the dark, and the whisper of your own breath. Maybe if you're lucky, the fire holds just long enough to keep the frost from the walls. Maybe the baby sleeps through the night. Maybe tomorrow won't bring bad news. And if it does, you'll rise again, because that's what Edwardian families do. They rise, they carry, they keep going. Not because they have to, but because no one ever told them they could stop. So tonight, as you drift off, cocooned in scratchy blankets and hard-earned quiet, remember, you don't have to wake up in 1905. You don't have to draw water from a frozen tap. You don't have to stretch 6 pence to feed a family. You don't have to bury your feelings with your dead. Tonight, you rest in a different world, a softer one. So breathe, let the silence hold you, and sleep well.